Welcome to Behind the Investigation with Atlanta News First Investigates. I am Sierra Cummings. I'm joined with investigative reporter Andy Parati. Good to have you here, Andy.
Thanks for having me.
You've been doing a series called Reading Reset, and it's been a phenomenal series. We've been learning as watchers and listeners who have children, but also I'm speaking for myself. I don't have any kids, and it's just been a riveting investigative series. So this is kind of your final installment here. You've got some resolution at the state legislative level.
Yeah, so after months of reporting about potential causes of why Georgia's literacy is so poor, 70% of fourth graders cannot read proficiently according to a state assessment. Lawmakers took action, and here's what could happen if the governor signs this legislation.
The ladies recognized to present Senate Bill 93.
To have Senate Bill 93, which ensures Georgia teachers are ready to teach reading to our children on day one.
Missy Purcell watches Georgia lawmakers do something she didn't think was possible.
All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes.
Yes. Yeas 168, nays 0.
Voting to ban a controversial teaching method used to help students learn to read.
The same words.
Something Missy says harmed her son Matthew when he was in the first grade.
Can't read it.
Just do your best.
I can't. I don't know any of these words.
We first met the Gwinnett County mother last year.
If you could just walk a mile where we've been and what this does to a kid.
So it took a long time, but now we have unanimous support to turn the ship around and do the right thing by our kids.
What lawmakers banned is 3Qing, a method where kids only sample the letters and the words in the text, relying mostly on prediction and context for comprehension, often using pictures on the page to cue young readers to learn words. Some experts believe cueing doesn't put enough emphasis on phonics or sounding out words. At least 19 states have banned it so far.
Colleagues, 70% of our fourth graders are struggling to read on grade level.
State Senator Rashawn Kemp, a former school teacher and principal, co-sponsored the legislation. He read a letter Missy wrote to him about her son on the Senate floor.
This method did not teach him to read, it taught him to guess, leaving him anxious, struggling, and believing he wasn't capable for his first 5 years of school. No child should experience that.
Part of me is a little emotional because we have a law now that's going to stop practices that hurt our kids.
The legislation faced criticism, including from the Georgia School Superintendent Association.
But to use the term ban from the classroom, I think instills a sense of fear in teachers that, is this strategy okay? Is this one not okay? It just creates a little bit of anxiety in terms of, am I doing something illegal in my classroom?
Georgia State University Dr. Caitlin Dooley also voiced concern. She chairs the university's Department of Early Childhood and Elementary Education.
Are we saying that kids shouldn't have pictures in their books? It doesn't make any sense.
State Representative Bethany Ballard, also a former English teacher, authored the legislation.
It does not ban the use of picture books or pictures. All of this can be used as a supplemental material in the classroom, but they may not be used as the primary means of instruction.
The legislation also prevents schools from using a reading intervention program called Reading Recovery, used by Georgia school districts for decades to help struggling first graders. A 2023 University of Delaware study found it can be harmful to children. The instruction uses the 3Qing method.
At the end of the day, 3Qing is not aligned to the science of reading, and it has failed too many students. When you have a 70% rate of students not reading on grade level, that is an emergency 5-alarm fire across all areas.
The passing of the bill follows multiple Atlanta News First investigations over the past 5 months, part of our Reading Reset series, revealing potential causes to Georgia's literacy crisis.
We are crippling our young learners.
And its impact on children and their families.
His learning experience has impacted his mental health.
How did our reporting impact this legislation?
this really made a big impact. I know that our legislators saw it. Hopefully somehow our stories and our experiences can pave a better way or be part of paving a better way for future children and their families.
So you talked about a lot of what this bill could ban.
Yeah.
What else would this law do if signed by Governor Brian Kemp?
Yeah, so the legislation also completely overhauls how teacher preparation programs teach future teachers how to read. So there's all this debate and all this criticism of our universities preparing our future teachers to teach children the correct way to learn. And for decades, research has shown potentially that hasn't always been the line with the science of reading, and that's evidence-based reading instruction that we know that hasn't always been used for decades, and one of the potential causes of why Georgia's literacy rates are so low. So they're completely overhauling how future teachers are supposed to be taught in universities. It would also allocate about $10 million to hire 50 new literacy coaches. These aren't teachers, these are coaches that teach teachers, that make sure that they're doing the right things when trying to help young learners learn to read. And we found that this is really an effective role in elementary schools when we profiled Marietta City Schools a number of months ago. Their reading numbers, their reading scores are just outpacing the rest of the state, and they've been using one of these literacy coaches, they call them literacy facilitators, for the past couple of years. So they're really hoping that these positions will trickle down and have a positive effect. Because the Literacy Council of Georgia, which is a role appointed by the governor and state lawmakers, their goal is to be the top in the nation in 5 years. So they have a long way to go, though. And Georgia's reading proficiency rates at fourth grade the state has never reached this proficiency goal for fourth graders, at least that we can see since 1998.
That's insane. Yeah. You know that cliche saying, last but certainly not least? I definitely feel that way about this series because, we were watching it in our investigative office and, we give feedback after we watch our stories, but most of us were like, no notes. We have no notes. This is such like a great final chapter in this series. And this installment particularly had a lot of balance. So talk about I would love to have a broader perspective on this entire series. You had to look at this issue from all perspectives, and maybe early on it was a little tricky kind of getting the alternative voices, but certainly in this piece you've got this 360 perspective of the problem and solutions.
Yeah, so there are a lot of people that are really glad this legislation is likely going to happen, hoping the governor signs it, but there's also a number of people in education that are like, whoa, this may be going too far. And you heard the superintendent say, anytime you use the word banned, teachers start to get a little nervous of like, am I doing something illegal? And I think you often hear that with the argument over the past couple of years, we've heard banning of books. That is not happening here. As you also heard the lawmakers say, we're not banning picture books. We're just saying if you're going to teach children how to learn to read, you're not exclusively using picture books to cue young readers to learn words, that it's a supplemental. And then we also spoke to the Georgia State University chairperson in the Department of Early Education, and her also saying, are we going to ban picture books? And you obviously heard Representative Bethany Ballard saying that's not the case. And then we also reached out to Reading Recovery of North America. That's the program that the state of Georgia has used for years as an early intervention program for struggling first graders. It's been used so long that it was actually in state code as something that schools were encouraged to use essentially. Even though this legislation would essentially remove it from state code and more or less ban it, schools over the past few years have been slowly really walking away from this program because in many educators' eyes it doesn't align with the science of reading, which is sort of the mandate that lawmakers have said that school systems in Georgia have to align with when it comes to reading instruction.
It was so fun in this story to see the mom react to our lawmakers' vote on this bill, and that was such a fun way to show what had happened without actually just using file video of the legislative session. So on that note, what's been the reaction of the families that you've interviewed in the series?
I mean, just joy and relief, and they've been trying to impact change for a long time. So for them, it's emotional. Advocacy work for them is very up and down. It's a roller coaster. And they say finally, after all this roller coaster of years of trying to advocate for change, because they said this type of reading instruction hurt their child, they sort of feel vindicated that finally, after years of trying to impact change, it's happened.
Final thoughts here, Andy. What's next? We know there's essentially like a clock for the governor to sign not just this piece of legislation, but the rest of the bills waiting for his signature. There's no real indication here that he won't sign it, right? You expect this to be signed by our governor.
I mean, who knows? But according to the family, they believe that it's going to be signed. It was wholly supported by the legislature, bipartisan support, and one of the bills it was all yays. So it would be surprising if he didn't sign it. But crazier things had happened. And I think right now, if it's signed, now we have to wait to see if it works, right? And our society and lawmakers and people in general, they're very impatient. And I think that what you're going to see is people be impatient, or you're going to see criticism that, like, hey, in a year, if the reading scores haven't increased, they're going to go, oh, this new mandate is not working. I think we used the reading curriculum that we had for decades. I think we have to give it a couple of years to find out whether it's working. The state's sort of, at least the chairperson of the Georgia's Literacy Council, his feeling is he hopes in 5 years. I think it's going to take a lot longer than that.
Wow. Well, we appreciate your investigations, especially because we've got some change here. We've got some solutions. So excellent work. We will be watching to see if this bill hits the governor's desk and he makes it law. You've been watching and listening to Behind the Investigation with Atlanta News First Investigates. Be sure to watch or listen wherever you get your podcasts.